Okay, so just to recap what we have talked about, we talked about how to give ourselves permission to be who we are back in February, how to work with grief for what was and is to be and who we want to be now. And last month, we talked about the art of being authentic in the world today. So, this session is kind of going to be just a free for all within the topics that we have covered, for you to just have open and honest conversation. Um, our coaches are here. They may have some questions as well, but we're going to kick it off with, if anyone has any questions or any topics that they want to just bring, please feel free. Well, maybe we could just open what with how have you been? As well,
I was
Mark.
nervous to come back to the
Yeah.
US. I had a lot of anxiety before returning.
Mhm.
Well, the first time I got on the train here, I was really nervous because I don't know if someone looks unstable, like if they're getting ready to attack me. Um, so going from Korea where I don't have to think about those things, and then coming back here with everything going on after Atlanta and the pandemic, and yeah, that was kind of tough. But the neighborhood I'm in right now in Jackson Heights, it's really diverse. So I think I'm okay here for now. But once I do get a job, like I will be in New York, I think that might be a little tough, but we'll see. Yeah, that's where I'm right now.
It's been real rough.
Mm.
It's been rough adjusting back to the US. And I got here last year, so I got the tail end of, Trump being here and the election. And I didn't have everything set up to even vote in the election in California. And it's been the state of the US has been really shocking, especially since Korea, we've had lovely President Moon and very progressive politics after Park Geun-hye, and it's been like Korea's Obama. So I think coming here when I did, plus the pandemic has been, and the Asian, I don't even feel like I'm having trouble relating to Asian American because in Korea, it's like you're an adoptee first, and then secondly, you're whatever country you grew up in. So I'm too American. And then all of my old friends here are Asian American, and uh, yeah, there's like it's nice the diversity within that, but it's also like I just have lived so internationally. I'm used to like mixing languages and just like it's like I feel less American, which is weird. And but and then the vaccine stuff, it's like has been really interesting because like I just came from a friend's place and we were all for the first time kind of not having to wear masks because we've all been vaxxed. And then I hear like how it's going in Korea and then like friends in Japan and like Denmark. And it's just I feel bad that America we're hoarding vaccines, and I hear from my friends in other countries how it's going, and yeah, it's just been a weird update on the U.S.
Well, I would like to make a comment and say that this mental health support group's been like really, really helpful for me. And I I didn't see the movie, but I just think of like that like there's also a book on this but the Sisterhood of Traveling Pants. I kind of felt like this group had that vibe, right? And like, you know, like everyone has like a different size, but somehow there's like a pair of pants that fits all of us. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. That's awesome. Nice. And how are you doing these days?
Yeah, I'm still in Korea and yeah, just wearing my mask and got some stuff going on here and there, but I'm just really enjoying my unemployment. I really like this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, nice, nice. And was your mom, you spent some time with your mom, is that right?
Yeah, so she
Mhm.
was here and she's back in Canada now.
Okay.
She's a working mom.
Yeah, yeah, nice, cool. That's great. And how are our coaches? Kyla?
Hi, everyone. Zooming in from Korea here. Doing really well. Thanks to COVID, my business has been growing a lot. So there's a silver lining, and just getting to meet people from all over the world. You know, because there's no, the real barrier now is like the time zone. Because everybody's on Zoom now, everyone's online. So that's just feeling really grateful and blessed, to be able to serve people in the way that I do, and really grateful to be here. And thanks for sharing what's been going on, for both of you in the States. I can only imagine, and I'm grateful that you're both here to share, and that you've been coming every month, and so grateful that you're, I love the analogy of the traveling pants. Like, I haven't seen that movie either, but yeah, I love the different size analogy, because we're all really human. That's really what connects us. So grateful to be here.
Nice, thank you. And Song, how are you?
I'm also doing great. I feel like I've recently kind of crawled out of my a somber period of dealing with the pandemic. I'm sure, you know, it's just normal that, you know, we all experience grief, right? And so I feel like I've um, have been able to take away a lot of lessons from that period, especially what's going on, not with this pandemic, but what's, you know, going here on stateside. And I have been channeling my energy into um, my business as well. It really has, this past year has really transformed who I want to serve and how I want to approach them. And so I'm currently going through this really exciting rebranding. So I've been taking time just, you know, working on that. And it feels really good because I feel like it's like before I kind of felt like when it came to my work, I was anxious because I was suffering with imposter syndrome, and now I feel anxious to get my message out to the world because I feel like I have a clear understanding of what I want to contribute to my community. So that's going on. My birthday is tomorrow. Yay. So yeah, thank you. And so I'm excited for that. And I don't know, I didn't share with you guys, but my grandmother passed away actually a month ago. And so I have been watching The Farewell. Have you guys heard of that movie? Yeah. And it was really been helping me, like, you know, process my grief. It's really beautiful. I'm not done with it yet, but like um Aquafina's does she still go by Aquafina? Okay, so I just want to make sure. Like her character, it's like I like it really resonated with me, like all the dynamics that she goes through with her parents and like, you know, the family, because our family also kept it a secret from my grandmother until the very end that she was passing away. And I had really mixed feelings about it as well. So they're like, God, yeah, this is what's going on with me. Yeah.
Nice, thank you.
Mhm.
And Kate, how are you? Mute.
Hi, everyone. You know, being in Korea, I was thinking, you know, this has been a relatively good place to kind of ride out this pandemic. And, um, you know, same like Kyla and Song said, like 2020 and this year, I was busier than ever, both with coaching and with travel, which I think is so funny because so many people in my life in the US, and not just in my life, were just at home so much of 2020. And I was just bopping around Korea every weekend. And I feel, I'm like, wow, I'm pretty lucky that I got to travel for the past year and a half very safely. And so I think for the most part, I'm sort of in a bubble. I don't pay a ton of attention to the news. I know there's a ton of vaccine talk. I'm curious if the Stop Asian Hate movement is still strong in the US. But I just feel like it's so different being here, where so many things we experience in the US, it's completely different here. You know, like I said before, like I've met a lot of Asians in Korea who are all racist toward each other, which is such a contrast from what was happening, or maybe is still happening in the US. But for the most part, day to day, I just kind of go about life. I mean, yeah, I wear a mask, but it's definitely not the panic that I think the US is probably decompressing from, hopefully decompressing
Nice. Okay, good. Right. So,
Wait, what about you, Tara? How are you doing?
oh, thanks. I'm good. I've been a bit crazy the last 2 weeks. I'm in France again. So I was in France, and then I went to Italy for 2 weeks because we were going to move there for our visas. And now we're back in France because we had visa complications because nothing is that easy. So, but other than that, yeah, I mean, kind of similar to Kate in a way. I don't pay attention to a lot. I was talking to so we're revamping the website and kind of rebranding the Universal Asian a little bit. And I was talking to the people who are designing it, and you know, they were asking me like, what kind of social media do I follow, and what kind of designs do I like, and stuff like that. And I said, other than for the magazine, I literally don't go online for anything. I don't know what websites I like because I only use them for functionality. I don't surf the internet and look at websites, you know. So that's kind of how I stay sane, because when I do jump into the magazine stuff and I go through Instagram and you know, or my Facebook feeds, it's a lot, and I'm regularly glad that I don't live in America these days, which feels a bit ungrateful or something. I don't know. I think that's the adoptee thing, but it feels somehow like being a traitor a little bit, that I don't want to be there. But at the same time, that's also what my Americanness affords me. Um, and so I take advantage of that as well. So, but in general, I would say I'm pretty good, all things considered. So, yeah. Thanks. Um, so hit us with your questions.
what I was gonna say was like, Tara, you mentioned the word traitor, which is I think is really funny you mentioned it because that is kind of the kind of complex I think I feel, and I don't know if it has to do with being Asian American. So I'm gonna put a link. It's from PBS. There's this whole series about like Asian American history. That's part 1 I sent you. But you know, it talks about this like really complicated history that Asians have had about crossing over to America and being like cheap labor, or you know, like the Japanese internment, American citizens being, you know, put in these camps. It was like really awful. And I think a lot of us like, well, there are definitely cases where like, you know, the government made you sign like, do you swear loyalty to the United States in case of war, right? So it's just a little heavy, just a little bit, right? But yeah, that's how I feel like as an Asian American. I feel like when we got all these messages about you don't belong here, once you mess up, you should go back to your country. You know, those things have affected me, like many Asian Americans. And how do I get comfortable with that kind of fragmented identity? So I don't know. I mean, actually, I think an American value is criticizing your country very openly. James Baldwin talked about this. So he said the reason he criticizes America so much is because he loves it. I don't know if I have the same love that he does, but yeah, I still feel really stuck in between the two. And I think it's just this thing is not going away. But the coaches here today probably have had clients with these kinds of issues. I don't want to think about it anymore. I'm kind of like approaching my later 30s and I just want to be done with it. Like, check. I know that's not the reality. But I'm a little resentful that my mother country is like literally on the other side of the world. Like, couldn't it have been like Canada or something? But no, it had to be Korea, right? Like thousands of miles away. So I don't know if I feel like a traitor. Like, I haven't done anything against America, but like this country with everything going on, it makes me like have to confront those things where it's like, I don't know, like, do I have to pick one or the other? Or I don't know. I hear like my friends who like were like bisexual, they feel this. They get like antagonism from both sides where like you have to choose. If you're a bisexual, then you're like invalid, right? You can't have like a desire for both. So I think maybe that's the way I feel like constantly in between. Anyway, I'll just throw that out there. If you guys have advice or insight about that. Was it too much again?
I think it's a really sometimes common topic. I think it's an important one. I've worked with that myself personally and with clients I've worked with. So, and I think it's it can be universal, like you said, with people who consider themselves bisexual. And for me, what I have determined over the years is, you know, this is something that can be as fluid as you want, right? Like, there's times in life, something's going to come up and you might examine it and question it. And I think it's important to do. I always think, you know, like I talked about in another session is, you know, looking within, asking questions within yourself. But it's really, I think, up to you. It's like you can choose if you want. You don't have to choose if you don't want. And it's always like, well, Korea is going to tell you one thing and the US is going to tell you one thing. You know, I always experienced that. The first time I ever came back to Korea was in 2006. And in the US, you know, we pay lots of money, or I did, to go to tanning beds and to be really dark. And before I went to Korea for the first time as an adult, I was so naive. And I thought, well, I better go tanning a few times before I go to Korea so I can impress everyone with my suntan. And so then I got to Korea and everybody wants to be white. So I say that as an example because there's always these conflicting voices, right? Korea is going to tell you be this way. USA is going to tell you be this way. And we can apply that to anything. One person's going to tell you do this. Another person's going to tell you do it this way. And at the end of the day, you have to decide what you want on your own. Because that's the thing with people pleasing that's so dangerous is you never win, right? You can't keep everyone happy. And it's always at the expense of yourself, right? I actually say that a lot in Korea because, I mean, people pleasing is everywhere, but I really have noticed it here. And I have said to people, okay, well, what if I change my mind and I want you to do something else? What are you going to do then? And I really want people to start asking themselves, like, how is this people pleasing thing ever? When does it end? Right? And so I think we all get distracted by external stuff. You should do this. You should wear a mask. You should not wear a mask. You should get the vaccine. You should not get the vaccine. And at the end of the day, you just have to decide on your own. And it can change. It can change every minute if you wanted it to. Whether do I have to pick Korea or the US or balance or unbalance as much of it as you want. It's the only thing that overall the years has like made me able to be sane with it.
Yeah, I totally like one positive thing about spending time in Korea is like when I got back, even though I was anxious about like public safety, I also had like kind of like blindfolds on, like as if I didn't care. Like if you have some issue with me, I don't have time for it. One, because I'm getting older, and two, I just came back from Korea. But at the same time, like the structural issues, like when you see all the antagonism between the communities, then it just like it puts it in my face where I have to ask the questions about like these structural issues. And I totally agree with you, Kate. Like you can't go around pleasing both sides all the time. But like right now in this heightened state of conflict, it's like coming back in my face. In Korea, I didn't have to confront it so much. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just got back 2 weeks ago, so we'll see. But yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
I do want to say that the struggles that you're currently experiencing and have been experiencing, or whatever, really deep emotions, deep complex emotions that you must be feeling right now, I think is very needed, and I appreciate you vocalizing that. In my last talk, I talked about authenticity, and what I tied it down to was obviously our Asian community, whether you're in America or whether you are in Korea. But I think one thing that I've learned is that in America, I'm tired of being this race, right? A part of this. I'm tired of being silent, and passed off as if my opinion doesn't matter, as passive, right? And then when it comes to my current, my Korean community, that Korean side of me, I'm tired of being gaslit, And I think what's really important is exactly what you are doing and sharing, because I think what we need is what the Asian community needs the most is to become authentic and to start writing our own stories now. But we can't do that if we don't bring to the table with vulnerability, what kind of struggles that we are currently experiencing. And I want to tell you that as a man, you have an advantage in, share, with your voice. So I think that's great. I think you should speak up about, like, even if you don't have the answers, is like really just, speaking up about, this is what I'm going through. What can we do? And getting that conversation started, because I think that's what our community needs, is like, we need discussions. We need to come together and we need to discuss with one another, who we are as a collective, right? Yeah. Yeah, it is a lot of work, And it's everything in your own time, everything in your own time, everything, you know, whenever you feel is best for you, honestly. Like I struggled, like, for example, like with me as a coach, like I started off as just a general life coach, and then I started changing because I realized I really want to work with relationships. And then I realized further down the line that I really wanted to elevate my voice as an Asian woman, you know, but I had to do so much work to like undo some weird conditioning I had around like showing up and taking space, you know? So it is a lot of work. I think the inner work, like when you're like presented with like that challenge and these complex emotions, you're like, oh God, I'm so tired, you know? And I literally had to like I took a break for so long. I was like, I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to think about it. And then as I started to just like, you know, just tell myself I'm not ready for this right now, I just gave myself as much time as I needed. I knew when the time was right for me to confront it, and I did, you know, which is why now I'm like able to proudly just speak up and say, I work with women of color, you know. I don't know why that was so hard for me before, but it,
Well,
you know,
I had the same thing. Like for the longest time, even now, like I don't use the word white or the term person of color because I think it's just terminology we had to accept, right? Um, I'm just like starting to think about this, but like, okay, there's like a spectrum, political spectrum, and when people start talking about race and labeling something racist, sometimes I feel like, and actually I'm borrowing from this person, Amy Chua, the Tiger Mom law professor at Yale, saying if you call everything racist, then nothing is racist. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to gaslight anyone saying, oh, like our institutions aren't racist, but I feel like when people, as soon as they hear that, they just kind of shut off because they've heard it too much. So yeah, I'm still uncomfortable. Like actually, I don't want to be a person of color. I just am from, with this background, but it's like everywhere, like the scholarships you apply for and your identity in American society and all these things, like, I don't know, it's just, I don't know what to do with it. It's difficult and weird, but
I'm the complete opposite. I bring it up every time I can. So I was gonna say, like, I think I used traitor because I was so different from everyone in my community. I was the only person of color around. I thought, you know what, why not? Like, why not just reject everything if it came down to a war? Because I was fighting a battle every single day living in a white community that if it came down to fighting for something, I was going to fight for at least the people who look like me, even if I knew nothing about them. Um, and and so then I left the States with the intention really of never going back. And and I love being American, but I love being American from a distance. And and I'm still in predominantly white communities, and all of my friends are white. They're from different countries, but they're white, um, and I bring it up all the time. Like, we went to this little tiny old ass village in Italy, which is where our apartment is. And I was telling my friends here in France, and I said, my husband and I, because my husband's of color, and I said, we just diversified that town by 200%. And and everybody was like, oh, because they forget that I'm not white, and I don't want them to think of me as white. I want them to think of me as as, you know, just a normal person, but I also want them to recognize and acknowledge that I am not from their world 100%, just like they're not from my world 100%. And so I have no fear whatsoever or discomfort and just bring it up. And I bring it up lightly as a joke or whatever, so that it's not, you know, in their face. But I would say there's nothing wrong with making people acknowledge it and own it. Just,
I 100% agree with you. And I think, like you, Mark, I think I just wanted to be song. You know, I just wanted to help people, right? But then at some point, I had to get really clear about, because if I don't, like, I needed to say, I am a woman of color, because when I say that, what I'm also saying is that I also come with the same set of challenges that you have to go through as a more oppressed, less advantaged group of people, at least, for me here in the United States. And so I'm still song, at the end of the day, but I too, I very proudly say I am a woman of color. I'm Korean American, I'm Asian, I also don't stray away from using the terms white, and because, whiteness in the terms of in the more harmful context of like white supremacy, right? It's not, you don't have to necessarily be white to possess those traits of someone, who is a white supremacist. You can be Asian and still possess those traits that are harmful, you know? So these conversations and these distinctions, I think, are, important to me, and I don't stray away from them anymore either.
I mean, when you guys coach people, like this is, well, my experience, like when I had, well, have I? No, I have not directly confronted a white supremacist as far as I know. But like people who like maybe are white supremacists, in my opinion, like some of them, yeah, they really believe they're superior. But I think a handful of them just have like all kinds of psychological stuff going on, and they've latched onto that identity. And so as soon as they use the word white supremacist, it sounds like more of a sociological term instead of like them as a person and why they've come to this place. You know what I mean? So I have like difficulty balancing using these constructed terms to describe some phenomenon, but also trying to communicate to the other person that I see you as a multidimensional person. Do you know what I mean? I feel like
Looked into intersectionality.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But intersectional, but also like, okay, this is like, well, we're getting to really weird territory. Have you seen the movie Cloud Atlas? So like like the Wachowskis, they're both now transgender, but like you guys seen The Matrix, right? So like they say like The Matrix has like a transgender subtext or something. But like I think the reason why they play with concepts of reality is because they identify as transgender and it doesn't correspond to the majority of reality, right? So in Cloud Atlas, you see these characters, they're like reborn at certain times. And so one Korean actress, Bae-luna, she comes out, I think, next time as like a white person whose father is a slave owner, and her previous life she was Korean. And so when I look at people, I guess in some ways I believe in reincarnation, although I won't say it to them. So I'm trying to say like whatever you are in front of me right now is your current state, right? But you could be born as something else later. And the reason I say that is like I want people to have more empathy. Even though you're white or Asian in this life, you don't know what's gonna happen later or whatever. So yeah, that's why I have trouble using those terms, like to me, what I perceive as fixed terms, because they don't express fluidity, right? There's a tendency to like, black means this or white means that. right? And there's a lot of nuances in each community. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's something I just have to process, but I still struggle with it. I struggle with it. I don't know why, because like I've taken, you know, I've had courses with like you know, Black professors who are big proponents of race-based affirmative action, right? And I don't have problems engaging those materials, but something always threw me off about it. I don't know what it is. That might have been the reason why I left the US for a certain period of time, because I just got confused by everything. Because there's no solution to all the, you know, the different arguments we're having with each other, and then we throw terms out and they get misinterpreted a lot, I think, right? They're very charged. So I don't know, maybe I need to turn off the news like Kate and Tara. So just turn off the news for a little bit and maybe that will help. But anyway, I'm processing now. Yeah.
Can I jump in? First of all, thank you for sharing. I agree with Song that what all she said about that you're bringing what you're bringing, you know, that's a really incredible first step, and it's really valid, and we see you and we hear you. So I want to offer 2 frameworks for you. The first is kind of more up here. I call it the AAA method. I kind of came up with it when I was literally at my bottom. I was swimming and crying at the same time. I didn't think that that was possible. It is possible. So the first A is awareness. The second A is acceptance. And the third A is action. And then just looking back on this, so you cannot act on something that you don't accept. And you cannot accept something that you are not aware of. Okay. So that's kind of like a top, you know, aerial view. And then more of a deep dive question. So for me, my concern for my clients, because I love my clients very deeply, and that empathy part, what I take away from Matrix, because in my energy healing training, they often reference Matrix, is that part in the movie where like there's Agent Smith is like everywhere, you know, his face. And that is the idea behind that, is that I am you and you are me. We are all human, no matter what the skin color is. And we use this othering to perpetuate certain things because we don't understand, right? There's limited understanding. So what I love for my clients, whatever they're going through, is for them, I want them to have inner peace, right? Like, because if you don't have inner peace, then that leads to stress and anxiety. And then, you know, 76% of that then leads, you know, that is a cause for dis-ease, right? Which is what we don't want. So whatever you're growing through, whether it's, you know, you mentioned fragmented identity, you mentioned resentfulness, you mentioned, you know, what I love what Kate said as well about, you know, it's okay to like choose yourself, right? Then, and going back to what she talked about, the giving yourself permission, and what Song talked about, stepping into your authenticity. So what it sounds like right now is those 2 things, giving yourself permission and stepping into your authenticity, causing inner chaos, not the inner peace that is what would be good for you and all of us, right? So the question to ask is, how does it serve me to hold on to this? Right? Like, what are you getting? How are you benefiting from holding on, right? So sometimes we humans, we hold on to stress or anxiety or chaos or trauma because that's all we know. And sometimes we hold on to certain things because we inherited it from mom, dad, grandparents, right? We don't even know sometimes, right? Sometimes we hold on to stuff because it's somehow comforting, that, what Song talked about. Well, before I held on to that, I didn't want to look at it, right? That was what it made her on some level feel safe and protected. So she held on to that, which did not serve her. Then when she felt that she was ready and she had the strength and the courage to kind of look at it more, she realized, wait a second, this is not serving me. I'm going to let it go and step into a new level. She gave herself permission. She stepped into new level of authenticity. And that's going to be ever changing, right? Because you're never the same age. You're never in the same place. You cannot put pause on your life, right? And so regardless of, there's always going to be a crisis. There's always going to be a corona. There's always going to be a thing. There's always going to be a transition. There's always going to be change, right? So hope that's helpful.
And I just thank you so much, Carla. That was so well said. I can't compliment you enough on how eloquent you are. Yeah, so structured. I love it. And I also want to say one thing to you, is that some of the greatest aha moments and greatest pools of wisdom that I've ever accessed in life was anything that made me feel resistance. So whenever I feel resistance, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go there. I don't want to think about it. That's how I know that this is something I need to look at eventually, eventually. So yeah, that's it.
People talk about authenticity a lot, and I just feel like it's such a moving target, or I don't even know what that even is anymore. And I think it might be because I lived in Korea for so long, because I kind of know Korean to a certain level now, and I feel like I know other people say this, but it's like the language you speak, the structure of the language, the history, the vibration of it, for me, what I feel when I'm in Korea, or even when I'm here and speaking in Korean, it's like a different side of me. It's very different from how I'm speaking now in American English. And even my American English is messed up right now because my friends were kind of international, and I speak this weird European English now that my old friends here notice. I say Q, and I'm like meters, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know what Fahrenheit is anymore. Say in Celsius, and just the framework. I'm just sometimes I'm like, who am I? And in Korea, I'm not Korean enough. My Korean's not perfect. But I'm like, I can understand almost every goddamn thing you say, and my French listening is really good now because unfortunately I dated some French adoptees when I was younger, and that's a different side. I love French because of how there's just some things and that you can't, Koronika and Korean, you can't say that in American English, and et voila is the same in French. And I mean, I have like an identity crisis sometimes, just like in who I'm hanging out with and like what languages are around, and like because it's a different, it brings out a different side of you. So the whole authenticity thing, I'm like, get very existential. I was like, what is authentic? You know, like I'm just like, I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm like in my 40s and I'm like still confused. I'm like more confused, I think, because I came back to the US and trying to integrate all this stuff. But yeah.
Maybe there's a like multiple authenticities. So like, and those cultures, like they're all linguistically, they're so different. The norms of the societies are so different. One, yeah, more collectivist and one more individualistic, as you can see by how they handle the pandemic or whether I'm going to wear a mask or not. And I feel like, you know, it's not about people pleasing. It's like, I think I'm trying to say that I have different authentic selves. And it's very hard. So don't negate me, because I'm just following what I was raised with, just like you did, maybe to different extents, right? So to bring it back to the whole, like race is a very complicated, you know, conversation, but like those terms, I think what I'm saying is like, it feels like those are fixed terms when in reality, people are not fixed. It's like I don't know, like interpolating is the right word. So like it bothers me, maybe because I'm more sensitive to it, because I've been like going around and I feel that all the time, where there's a dominant group and then there's me. And I always have to sense how they see me and how I see them. But yeah, maybe different authentic selves, maybe that's one way to deal with it, like linguistically or psychologically. Yeah. And going back to Kyla, that question about how does it serve me, that's a good question. But maybe I have to work through like, maybe that's like new territory for me a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm also going to push you, brother. So you said earlier that, you know, you're tired of feeling this way. You know, you're a certain age now. But then the song talked about, well, I had to do work on myself, da, 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 and you were like, no, I'm too tired. You can't have both, brother. You can't have both. And this is your Asian sister calling you out with love and kimchi.
Thank you.
Sprinkles.
Wait, can you give tips then how to do that? Because I'm very tired. I'm very tired. I'm tired, man. Like,
Sounds like burnout. Yeah, sounds like burnout. Yeah.
But in Asian cultures, burnout is normal. Like you gotta take the university entrance exam a third time if necessary, if it gets you into Sky University, right? You will work endlessly, right? But I mean, I'm sure you guys know, like in the medical community, they've recently been talking about like physician burnout and suicide because of burnout, right? Yeah, we have to talk about, like, I'm burnt out, and so I don't know, that's why I go smell perfume sometimes, because I'm burnt out.
That's grounding. Yeah, it's very grounding.
Yeah.
Well, I think yeah. So I think this is why, okay, for at least for me, authenticity has been such a important element in my self-care, right? Is because basically it is complex, but the easiest way that I can explain authenticity is when my insides match my outside, right? But then it gets complex because who I am inside, there are different layers to that, right? There is my cognitive self, there is like my emotional self, and then there's like this spiritual aspect of me too, right? If you're ready for that. But when you know who you are inside, at what point do I feel, when you are self-aware of, at what point does this make me feel bad? At what point is this making me feel mentally exhausted and burnt out? I think authenticity is an ultimate self-preservation tool, because when you know who you are inside and you have these like your meter, you know, you can see in your mind's eye, your meters going on like this, you know, from empty to full, right? It can help you to stop when you need to stop, regardless of what societal norms and pressures say is not acceptable or not, even though it comes at the cost of being deviant, right? So yeah, so for me, it's always about who I am, being authentic, who I am, who I portray on the outside matches my inside, So that's why the inner work that your sister Kyla is pushing you to do is it's very hard, but I think in the end it's worth every second. Yeah, you should be who you are in the unique way that you are and continuously display your exceptionality to people, because that is how I think people revere you. That's the core of my work, is help. Well, I work with women, but like I help women to really understand what works for me, what doesn't work for me, what are my values, and at what point is someone disrespecting my values, which are called boundaries, and what makes me awesome, So yeah, who cares?
Nice.
I love that. Who cares? I don't care. Leave me alone. The best.
So
thing.
I'm sorry. So we're coming upon just over an hour. But I wanted to see if you had anything that you wanted to add or share, or are you all good?
Yeah, I mean, that was a really good discussion. And yeah, I think that, everything comes with a price. And sometimes it's really hard to have values. Like Song, like she talked about how, you need to have boundaries and things, but like sometimes it's hard to have boundaries, to have values and things. And like I really love how, we come together and we talk about our boundaries and our values, and then that like kind of helps you keep going, even though there are times when you're like, this is too expensive, I can't afford to have these kind of things. I love this.
Cool. Nice. Does anyone have any final thoughts or comments before I close up?
I have a question for the coaches, but I think I came to the very first one of the
Okay.
series. So if I missed this, if this is redundant, I'm sorry. Or I'm not sorry. Just wondering how the coaches how you got into coaching. Yeah. And what that path was for you. I'm just curious about that, but yeah.
I can answer really quickly because I actually have to go. For me, let's see, the quick version is when I was in college, I really wanted to do something with mental health. And I went to grad school for counseling, and I was working in a child and family therapy center. And it was very, I was much younger, and it was very, lots of abuse and family stuff. And it was really not, it wasn't, of course, an uplifting job. And I thought, oh, I should just like go to medical school instead and be a psychiatrist. And so I started working at a psychiatric hospital, and lots of medication. And it really changed my view on Western medicine within the mental health settings. And I was doing group therapy with very acute patients. And I started incorporating meditation, yoga with them. And that's when all the light bulbs went on for me, because I was like, I'm still helping people in a similar way, but through a different method. And that opened up the doors. So then I studied massage therapy and yoga and life coaching and that's so it's been this evolution really of being within this emotional health. I just always knew that's what I was supposed to do in terms of work, but it was finding the right avenue.
Yeah, I can go next. I also have to jump off here, but I love that question. That's such a great question. So I moved out to Korea 10 years ago. I'm a California transplant. And I was working as a professor at one of these sky universities, Yonsei. I loved my job. I love my students. And then I was calling myself a global happiness coach because I had then developed my own workshop called the Happiness Workshop, which I brought around the world. Then in my own personal life, my mom was diagnosed with early onset dementia in 2016. So I quit my really cushy job, and everybody said, don't do that. But I didn't listen. Bye, Kate. And I'm so glad I didn't listen. And I ended up at this surf yoga women's retreat in Bali, and I happened to meet this very mysterious energy healer from Hungary, and I ended up working with her for 2 years, and I actually still work with her for monthly maintenance, and it totally transformed my life, my business, my life, everything, like completely 180. My business is growing, like, because of all the limiting belief work that I had to do. And I now infuse all the energy healing techniques that I learned from there into my current offerings. So it was such a game changer, and I'm so grateful. But I have to run to my next thing, but so great to see all of you. You're amazing. And please keep in touch.
So thank you for asking. So for myself, I am somebody who pretty much knew from a really young age that, I know it might sound cliche, but I've always known that I wanted to help more, like, I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people who are struggling ever since I was a kid. And life experiences basically primed me to be the person that I am, because I am a survivor of, childhood sexual abuse. I struggled with mental illness. I'm a recovered drug addict. So I've spent a lot of time, in therapy and overcoming my trauma and complex PTSD, as well as consistently still healing from, just consistently working on myself, right? But then in my adulthood, I, you know, I really went through this period where after graduation, I was like really felt pressured to fit society's mold of what it means to be successful. And I did. I climbed my way up the career ladder. I was very successful, with like international affairs and human resources, but I was so unhappy and I was so stressed, and I was suffering from basically like chronic illness for for 2 years, And then one thing led to another. I actually was able to leave my job, my professional job, where I was miserable. Even though like I had healed myself, my inner self, I wasn't really living my truth, if you will. And then I realized, in the last, a year and a half or so, that it was like basically my time to do what I truly want to do, which is to help other women love themselves, be empowered, and to, really, find and be in like healthy relationships, whether it's romantic, whether it's, friendships or whatever it is, because relationships are everything. So that's me.
So a huge thank you to Kyla, Kate, and Song for sharing your time, wisdom, and selves in these sessions over the past 5 months. Can you believe it? And a massive shout out to those of you who have joined us for the journey. And we will keep you posted if we put together more mental health specific topics, but we do have other events coming up under the Universal Asian Voices series. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. And with that, I shall sign us off.